Hey everybody, it's Chuck Dixon. Back to talk to you about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. I'm here to answer your questions. And once again, I'd like to make a little pitch, a little pass around the plate, sort of. If you folks could, help me and share on social media links to these video segments, be enormously helpful to me. As I've said before, these take time, time I could be spending writing. And as much as I enjoy doing them, I've got to kind of justify it. Um, and that would be, either through eyeballs or actual monetization. I'm way, way far away from any kind of monetization on YouTube, but more eyeballs would be good. And a lot of you have listened to me and done as I've requested because I've seen a more rapid growth in viewership for these videos in the past few weeks than I had previously. So I appreciate it. If you've been sharing, I ask you to continue to share. If you enjoy these and have not shared them yet, let your fellow, geeks and geekettes know that there's a working comic book writer here that will answer your questions in depth in a lot of cases. Let's get to our first question. Fellow Floridian and fighting devil dog Barry Mitchell asks, um, when writing a comic, does it look like a screenplay before it goes to the artist? A lot of people wonder, what does a writer do? What's it look like? And basically, it does kind of look like a screenplay, uh, but there's some major differences. Um, it's laid out in pages and panels. This is a full script, by the way, and the dialogue follows underneath. Getting a little closer here, you see you've got the page and the panel, the description for the artist, and it's usually a pretty pragmatic, prosaic, very specific, very literal description of what's needed in the artwork to carry the story, and followed by the uh, dialogue. And as you can see, some of the dialogue is in bold. It indicates to the letterer that, the writer would like that word emphasized. And this is also where you would put your sound effects. And sometimes I'll even alter the size of the lettering, as alter the size of the words as a guide to the letter. Maybe they might want to emphasize this word even more. And the beauty of doing scripts on the computer with a writing program is you can also add in images. So if there's any particular reference images for characters or some device or building or landscape or whatever, I can stick those images right in the script, which is pretty cool. Now, I did not invent this script form. It was invented by Bob Kanigher, one of the most prolific comic book writers of all time, the creator of Sergeant Rock. He used to wrote Wonder Woman for, I think, decades. And he gave me a script when I was visiting the DC comic offices sometime in the late 70s. And it just seemed such an elegant script form, I just used it. And I've seen other script forms, and I don't think they're as simple. And the acid test for me is that artists tell me that my scripts are so easy to follow. They really like this script format because it's very specific, but flexible. Now, some of you sharp-eyed geeks may have noticed that the cover sheet was for Outsiders, Batman the Outsiders number 12. And they'll say, hey, wait a minute, Chuck didn't write that issue. Well, I did. I was taken off Batman and the Outsiders with issue 10, but I'd written through issue 15. And so you got a glimpse of a Chuck Dixon script that was never produced. Anyhow, let's move on to our next question. Stephen Scott Bo Smith, otherwise known as Bo Smith, he says, Chuck, you and I had an opportunity to write Batman Wildcat, and we also wrote Catwoman Wildcat. We were all geared up to write the next Wildcat team up with the Batman universe, Robin Wildcat. But then someone let the air out of the inner tube of fun at DC, and the project was frozen in time. Would you share some of the ideas and fun that you and I were going to have with this kid with his bad Uncle Romp? Yeah, for those of you who don't know, um, Batman and Wildcat met frequently in Brave and the Bold. I think Wildcat would show up like once a year. So it must have been popular. Readers must have liked it. And they all were always teaming Batman and Wildcat together in Brave and Bold on a regular basis. If I remember right, generally in the summer when comics sold best. Um, and, Bo and I, have an affinity for these issues. There are a lot of late night conversations at Comic Cons we would have about them. We also have an affinity for Ted Grant, the Wildcat character. Um, he was unusual for a comic book character because he was an older guy. He was a comic book guy who was our dad's age when we were reading them, and both Bo and I responded to that. I think a lot of kids did. I think that's why he was popular because he was kind of the tough mentor type character from another generation, a holdover from the golden age of comics, who was allowed to age. Ted had a little gray in his temples, and then it's established later in Batman mythos that he was actually a mentor of Batman's. He taught him to box. Um, so some of Batman's earliest martial arts training was with Ted. So Bo and I'm pretty sure it was Bo proposed an idea that the two of these would meet and he and I would co-write them. And we had co-written before, and it's we have a beautiful friendship when it comes to co-writing. It's very organic. It's very back and forth. We generally plot the thing together and then spend the rest of the project writing each other into corners and daring each other to get out. But this one was fun because it pit Batman and Wildcat as adversaries in the boxing ring, as they're both taken prisoner and forced to fight one another. There's also a whole, it's like a gladiatorial combat thing. There's a whole bunch of bad guys and crooks and supervillains are being held captive and forced to fight in this arena kind of thing. And it was a lot of fun to write. It was a lot of fun to write. Knows a lot more about boxing than I do, so he brought that to the project, and you know, and we kept daring each other, one-upping each other, and that one-upping each other got into a fever pitch when we did Catwoman Wildcat. It's one of the meanest comics. I think it's the meanest Comics Code comic ever put out. I mean, just nasty, nasty stuff happens in this book. For some reason, Catwoman Wildcat brought out some sort of, explored some sort of dark corner in the psyche of both Bo and I. And it just really gets nasty in the fights and the attitude and everything else. And of course, for both of these, we had Sergio Cariello, our good buddy, our amigo, and just an all-around awesome artist. And Sergio he just got into it. He really did. He just got. Well, this is Brian Stelfree's cover, but they were gorgeous as well. But Sergio he understood somehow. What we were going for. He really got to the heart of the thing, and made it a lot of fun. Now, as far as Robin Wildcat, I really don't remember, except I think the core of it was going to be that Batman did not approve of Robin hanging out with Wildcat. It's because Wildcat was a bit of a bad influence. Wildcat is a troublemaker. He doesn't usually, well, it's not that Wildcat makes trouble. He just never runs away from it. And Batman did, I think the core of our story is that Tim Drake really wasn't ready to meet a guy like Ted Grant, but, goes ahead anyway. I don't recall what villain we were going to use or what the main thrust of the through story of it was, but we were looking forward to have a lot of fun. But all things come to an end, I guess. And teacher took away our comic books. Next question, Robert Barrero. You have a chance to write for a foreign market. What market would you choose and why? I didn't even have to think about this. I like a lot of comics from overseas, but generally my favorite are from Italy. and more specifically from Sergio Bonelli Publishing. They got, as you can see, they've got this enormous cast of characters. But my absolute favorite is that guy in the center, Tex Willer. I love Westerns. I've never made a secret of that. And Tex Willer, who's been around for 75 years, going on 80 years, as a comic character in Italy, um, is the best Western comic ever published in the world. It's just the artwork and imagery and authenticity of it. Plus, you've got, literally, I mean, would that be millions of pages? I don't know. He appears monthly in really thick digest books, and tons of specials and albums, and I love them all. And most of most of Europe and South America's greatest artists have, at one time or another, done work on Tex Willer. And what I liked most about it is the longer format. I mean, a short text story is 150 pages long. Is that the story has room to breathe, which is perfect for a Western. There are lots of pages that are strictly panorama and eye candy. I mean, they might spend a page, of text talking while he saddles a horse, and it's all done with a great degree of authenticity and authority. And I was fortunate enough, although it took me forever to do it, is to I got to write some text. I did this sort of Belgian style uh, album, and I did two other stories which were shorter. I did two 32-page stories for one of the Text monthly magazines, and it took me a while. I mean, Joe Kubert tried to get me into these books. Some other people tried to get me on these books. I was always letting Bonelli know that I was very, very interested in contributing to Tex Willer. And finally, I think it was a Danish publisher who put me in touch with the right people, and they brought me on. And I wrote three, and I probably would have written more, but apparently the added cost of translating my scripts, um, you know, made them reluctant to continue to hire me. But boy, they do these album specials that are over 200 pages long. I would have loved to have done one of them, but apparently that would have broken the bank. So yeah, my favorite foreign market is Italy, and apparently I'm a favorite there. When I was on Detective Comics, Detective sold as well in Italy alone as it did in the United States. And I wrote some Conan stuff. When Marvel stopped publishing Conan in the United States, Italy kept on. Marvel Italia kept on. And I wrote a number of Conan stories that appeared only in Italian. So I like the Italian market, and it likes me. There you go. Easy choice. Jennifer Young Lowenthal. She asks, when and what made you realize you wanted to become a writer? And what experience, if any, made you doubt your decision? What experience is most memorable in affirming your career choice? Well, back when I went to Garrettford Elementary School, I was just a typical kid. I think it might have been third grade. I think it was third grade. And we were given this storytelling assignment, like a creative writing assignment. This is not my classroom. I just pulled this off the internet. Don't go looking for me in this picture. Anyway, we were given this creative writing assignment. The teacher had a box of photographs she clipped out of magazines, and she told the class to take a photograph out of the magazine and write a story about it. And I said, "Can I take more than one photograph?" And the teacher said yes. So I took 3 or 4 photographs and I wrote this story. I don't remember what the story was, but it was I think it featured a wise ass kid and an old guy uh, on a farm. I have a vague memory of that. Well, anyway, we were all to write our story, and then the next day everybody would read their story to the class. And when I read my story to the class, I got laughs, which was intentional because I meant the story to be funny. But I got laughs, which surprised me. I thought it was funny. I didn't know anybody else would think it was funny. And I guess from that point on, I wanted to be a writer. I wound up writing our 6th grade play. I mean, usually they just pulled plays for elementary schools out of a playbook somewhere, but I was allowed to write my 6th grade play. And And from there, I just kept doing that. In addition to writing comic books, writing and drawing my own comic book stories, I would write short stories and things like that. So that's what really set me off. Whatever discouraged me? Well, I got a lot of discouragement. This sucks. You can't write. You can't make any money at this. And if I needed any other discouragement, I would just visit DC or Marvel's offices, and they would tell me, you suck. You're never going to make any money at this. What convinced me to keep on going? I don't know. I just kept on going. I didn't want to do anything else. It was kind of like I'd burn all my bridges behind me. I didn't get educated to do anything else. I didn't have any skills, natural skills, other than telling stories in series of static pictures. So I just kept on with it. Persistence, persistence, persistence. All writers need a certain degree of ignorance and confidence, and I had tons of both. There you go. Mark Harrison Near, do you prefer attending big cons or setting up at your friendly neighborhood comic shops to meet your public? Well, cons are fun. They used to be a lot more fun. But actually, as they've gotten bigger and bigger, they're less fun. I can't tell you how many times I sit at the con. I'm at a 3-day con, and some guy comes up to me on the 3rd day and says, I didn't know you were going to be here, even though my name was on every program and every announcement, and it's on the website. There's so many people there, you get lost. It's kind of like social media, and it's hard to get noticed. And it's not that I want, to be noticed or, superstar status or whatever. But if I'm going to take the trouble to get into one of these cons, and there are more and more trouble all the time to get into, physically get into the con and set up. If I'm going to do that, I want to talk to people. I want to, meet the fans. That's the whole point of coming to the damn thing. And that's getting harder and harder as there's more and more competition. They're just getting too freaking huge. I really do prefer the more intimate setting of the comic shop, and the ones I really prefer to are the ones I can drive to and get back home in a day. I don't, so I'm not going for 4 or 5 days. So I like going to the local shops, and luckily here in Florida we got tons and tons of shops, and you get to meet interesting people. Here's George Lowe and I goofing around. Sergio Cariello and I live only 20 minutes from each other, but the only time we ever see each other is at store appearances. So, and they're great places to go and exchange ideas and concepts, and with my fellow creators. So, but my one criteria in visiting a comic shop is that it have comics somewhere in the name of the store. Yancey Street Comics, the Comics Master, the Comics Universe, the Comic Shop, Dave's Comics. I'll go there. But when I hear from people and they say, well, my store is called the Hobbit Hole or the Magic Realm or something like that doesn't say comics, it's a big no from me. Like if you don't have comics in the name of your store, I got a problem with that. You don't know how to market things, so you're probably not going to know how to set up a store appearance either. Because what's the point of going to a store appearance if I'm the only one appearing? If you know what I mean. All right. Levi Sweeney says, politics and religion in Marvel and DC Comics, yay or nay, and why? Why? Because they don't fit. Nay, yes, nay. I say thee nay. Yeah, they don't fit. It's escapist entertainment. I don't want to be thinking about, Sunday school or election day when I'm reading about, superheroes or, Sergeant Rock, whatever. Yeah, let's keep that out of it. Unfortunately, that's not happening these days. More on this in a upcoming Ask Chuck Dixon. Okay. Drew Geraci, Drew B. He says, my question for the next Ask Chuck Dixon, if you got to write the Avengers, what would be your lineup? Well, when I was actually a kid when the Avengers premiered. first dropped onto the newsstand. Big surprise to me because back then we didn't know what comics were coming out. It's like, woo, the Avengers, all these guys together in one book. And then along, was it issue 3? Captain America shows up. Huge event for me. I mean, just enormous. I can't tell you how big an event for me as a comic geek, as a young nerd, this was. And then somewhere down the line, for whatever reason, they decided to change the lineup, and you wound up with Cap leading a group that had a witch, a guy that runs fast, and a guy that shoots a bow and arrow. It was rather a letdown from the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor. Who were these guys going to avenge? Or were they going to check parking meters? It just I mean, the Marvel Universe has all these enormously powerful, bruising, cosmic kind of characters. And to reduce their premier superhero group down to a bunch of people who basically bought their outfits at a sporting goods store, this just didn't make any sense to me. So what would my Avengers lineup look like? Well, I think I've given you a preview. First of all, Cap has to be the leader. Captain America has to be the leader of the group, particularly the group that I would put together. I would include Ant-Man and the Wasp simply because I love these characters. And we need a female character. And in later iterations of Avengers, the Wasp became the de facto leader of the Avengers when Cap wasn't around. And, Janet Van Dyne was written as a very capable character. She's an underdog because she's a woman. And I don't mean she's an underdog because she's a woman because women are inferior. The underdog is a character that everybody underestimates. And it could be literally a dog or a child or someone with a disability or someone who's old. And the bad guys underestimate them. Oh, it's just a little kid alone in a house. We can do whatever we want. And then the underdog kicks all the bad guys' asses. And who doesn't love that kind of story? And the Wasp is the perfect female underdog because, first of all, she's female. So the bad guys underestimate her. And secondly, her superpower is becoming tiny, which makes her even more of an underdog. I mean, how cool is it when the Wasp, wins the day? I love that. And Ant-Man is just cool. And together, the two of them add a science aspect to the Avengers, which, considering that the Avengers fight a lot of science fiction-y type villains, you're going to need someone to explain all that stuff. I would have the Hulk, because this is the Avengers. The Avengers. It's, no panty waists allowed. So I would have an Avengers group that was basically, a blunt force. And I would have the most powerful figures in the Marvel Universe in it. So in addition to the Hulk, I would also have Namor and Iron Man. Namor is great because he adds tension. The Hulk adds tension as well, but Namor, he's just such a prick. And I love it. And, and of course, Iron Man in whatever iteration, whoever's in the suit. I don't care who's in the Iron Man suit. Iron Man's a cool character, and have Iron Man as part of my group. And these also are a pair of brute force characters. They can bring it. I'd also add Rage. Rage is a character created during Larry Hama's, unfortunately, brief run on the Avengers. It's one of my favorite runs on the Avengers. And I read a lot of Avengers. It's probably one of the few comics I have a near complete run of up until maybe mid-90s. I really like Rage. He probably would want to update his costume just a little bit from the 90s or 80s. But he just sort of vanishes from the continuity once Larry's off the book, and you just never see him again. I know how that feels. So, and I'd like to just bring him back because he was another brute force character, but also he was kind of edgy and a little bit rebellious and very skeptical of just about everything. And I really like that. Now, I always like to have a wacky, uncontrollable, crazy element in my stories, especially superhero stories. Something that brings some humor, something that has some laughs, something that creates some unpredictability. So everybody likes to throw in a wild card of their own. My wild card would be the Impossible Man. I would have a storyline that, and it might continue on through my entire proposed run, where the Impossible Man, he wants to become an Avenger. He just decides he wants to be an Avenger, and does everything he can to try to join. And of course, that just creates more and more and more problems for the group. And they've got to deal with him not as a supervillain, but sort of as a pest, which basically is what the Impossible Man is. He's not really a villain, he's a pest. And I think that would be fun. That'd be a blast to write. So anyway, that's it for this week. Remember, Unauthorized TV, it's a subscription service channel that I have my own channel on. I think we're getting close to 100 videos there. They go into much greater depth than these videos. So if you like what you're listening to or watching here, might want to consider signing up for my channel on Unauthorized TV. And that's my commercial for this week. And that's Ask Chuck Dixon for this week. And I will see you all down the road. Keep sending questions on Facebook and on YouTube, and I will eventually get to every single one of them. Thank you.